All right. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. Happy World Ocean Week. If you've been with us this week, you know that we are live from the Explorers Club in New York with an amazing series of events in partnership with the Explorers Club. We've been talking to ocean scientists, researchers, explorers, filmmakers, conservationists from all over the world, all sharing their stories, sharing their research, documenting important issues to bring to the general public, and looking for ways to protect our planet's ocean, which we couldn't survive without. So today, Friday, is our final day, but we're not going out quietly. We've got a ton of live events coming up. We are spending the morning focusing on sharks, and then in the afternoon, we're going to take a little trip, a virtual field trip to the Florida Keys to the Turtle Hospital to meet some sea turtles, learn about how they're threatened and what the ranch is doing to protect them, rehabilitate turtles, and then release them back into the wild where they belong. All right, well, let's get back right into the action today. We are starting off with Andrej Gajić joining us today. He is a scientist, biology professor, research diver, published author, awarded photographer, entrepreneur, traveler, and parachutist. As a research scientist, he is conducting original studies covering aspects of zoology, ecology, and pathology of sharks, skates, and rays. And he's doing this to develop long-term conservation strategies across the Mediterranean and around the world. He's the founder and CEO of Sharklab ADRIA Center for Marine and Freshwater Biology and the head scientist of the Shark Tales at National Geographic in Washington, D.C. So let's take a little trip to Albania. Let's bring Andrej in live with us right now. Hey, Andrej, how you doing today?
Hello, how are you? I'm very well. Thank you for having me today, and I'm delighted to be here first talking about sharks on your final day and to give a little bit of sharky atmosphere from our field, because for the past 6 months we are here at the field every day working with sharks and fighting to save them.
All right, awesome, Andrej. We have such a great group of classrooms joining us. We've got some on camera with us. We have a ton tuning in via YouTube. I'm going to give a quick couple shout outs here before we let you take over. We've got groups in St. Paul, Minnesota, Waterdown, Ontario, Muskoka, Baldwin, New York, St. Edwards, Toronto. Let's see, more in Milton, Canada. All right, great crews joining us today. New Jersey, keep those greetings coming. Andrej, let's let you take over. Take us into your sharky world, and then we'll have a little Kahoot quiz, and then we'll get down to some Q&A action.
Thank you. I'm going to share my screen now. Just a second.
Sure.
Just let me know if you can see the presentation.
We got it. Good to go.
Perfect. Well, sharks have been around for a very, very long time. And based on the fossil scales, some scientists do believe that sharks first appeared in the oceans more than 450 million years ago, which is almost 200 million years ago before the dinosaurs ruled the planet. And they survived 5 mass extinctions, including the one that killed the dinosaurs from our planet. And now, in our time, they are still highly threatened by the overfishing, pollution, uncontrolled and undeveloped fishing measures like we have here in the northern Mediterranean, which I will mention later. And I bet now most of you think about sharks as fearsome appearance fish, scary beasts with strong teeth, but that is far from the truth. There are more than 500 species of sharks, and almost half of them are less than 1 meter in maximum size. And the smallest of them poorly attain 9 inches of size. Besides, there are a lot of species, more than 600 species of skates and rays, which are sharks' close relatives, and are usually bottom-dwelling, but some of them live also in the pelagic surfaces. And how big they are? I probably bet that you think the sharks are among the biggest vertebrates, and that is true. The whale shark is considered among the biggest fish that live today in the planet. But have you heard about the megalodon shark that lived in the past? Imagine this size tooth that ruled the oceans in the past times. And even here in Albania and all the Balkans, we still have found the fossils of the megalodon sharks. And there are some hypotheses that this area was the nursery ground of them. So it is of particular interest of paleontologists that are working in this area. And the smallest shark species, as I told you, poorly attain 9 inches. And They're glow in the dark. The lantern sharks that we have here in the Adriatic are very big in number in the deep sea, and they inhabit waters deeper than 300 meters. And they develop the special ability to emit the dark light, which is around blue color and can be seen about 3 to 6 feet from the animal. It's pretty amazing. And the biggest of them are like the school bus, and these are the whale sharks. The second biggest, the basking shark, and another very large shark is the megamouth shark. And I bet you are interested in what these animals eat to become such big. And the answer will surprise you. If you look under the microscope, they feed mostly on the small fish and the plankton, the fish larvae, and other organisms found in the water. They can filtrate thousands of liters of water per hour eating these tiny organisms. And this tells you that all the organisms have their pieces within the ecosystem that grow such functional ways. And shark anatomy has inspired some smart designs like watercrafts, cars, even water turbines. And it is surprisingly, but sharks don't have bones. Their skeleton is made of cartilage. And the sharks, skates, and rays are actually a special type of fish known as elasmobranchs, which translated to English actually means the fish made of cartilage. And this type of skeleton is much lighter than the true bone. And they don't have the swimming bladder like the bony fish, but they very big liver full of low density oils actually replace the swimming bladder and make them buoyant in the oceans. And even the some species like the sand tiger shark are sometimes glob the air at the surface to make them float easily. And now I bet most of you wonder, what is it like to touch the shark underwater? You think sleepy? No. The shark skin feels much like the strong sandpaper because it's made of tiny teeth-like structures that are called the dermodenticles or the placoid scales. And unlike the sharks, most of the skates and stingrays are not covered with these scales and are sometimes a little bit sleepy. And they are very playful and very intelligent animals. And body to brain mass ratios is almost equal to some of the mammals or even higher than in some group of the mammals. And they have the real sixth sense, not like us humans. Their sixth sense is the electroreceptor pores that can sense the electric fields emitted by the animals in the surrounding water. So when we are discussing how they find the prey, besides these electric special structures, they have very good eyesight. And they even can differentiate some colors. But deep sea species, unlike the others, don't have the muscle in the eyes to control the amount of light that get into the eye. And therefore, they migrate vertically in the shallow waters through the night so they can feed. And yes, they can live for a very long time, like the Greenland shark, which is considered among the longest living vertebrates in the planet today. And of course, they are light because of the cartilage and because of lack of true bone. They can swim very fast. So mako shark is known to swim more than 45 miles per hour. And mako sharks have their breeding area just here in the Vlora, where I'm currently working. And we have encountered a lot of neonates and juveniles, and we put our very best efforts to save them from the extinction. And how we work? Our work is related to the boat, spending time underwater with sharks, to studying their habitats, their life preferences, to try to map their nursery ground, breeding areas. We try to understand them. What are their needs? What are their threats? And what is the best way to save each of the species individually? And in order to spend time underwater, beside the ROVs, which are the vehicles like the underwater drones we are using to fill the habitats, we are also going to diving. So this is overview of my personal equipment that I carry through the vast majority of my dives. And yes, it's very heavy. It's sometimes more than 100 kilos of weight on my back, but it is worth it because in this another dimension, another planet, you can really understand the animal. It's very helpful for making the scientific conclusion after the laboratory work, which follows the field studies. So at the field, we usually perform the night dives after midnight because sharks, most of them are nocturnal predators. We also try to save and review the sharks that are caught as a bycatch within the trawlers and longliners. These are special types of boats that put a lot of hooks, like a couple of miles of hooks, or the big nets that take everything from the bottom. And the effects these nets have are devastating. They're killing everything of themselves, including a lot of sharks. It is estimated that more than 100 million sharks, some estimations say even 150 million sharks are killed per year. And some of them need almost 20 years to get mature. So this is how threatened they are by our activities. Also to add pollution, habitat loss, urbanization, industrialization, and other anthropogenic factors that are making the sharks so vulnerable. And by diving with sharks, we also take the samples. We examine the health of them. For example, in this photo, you can see the health examination of the common torpedo ray within the only no breeding area in the entire Adriatic Ionian region, which took only a couple of days ago. And this is one of our most important part of the work, to examine how the pollution affects each population and what disease it may cause and what do we need to mitigate these effects and to save them. And the juvenile macro sharks are often discarded here as a bycatch, which means that entire generation are under a huge threat. And it's not something that only scientists are doing. Each of us can help sharks to survive by reducing the plastic, by taking care of the pollution, about use of the cosmetics, sanitary waste, etc. You are really saving not only sharks, but all other marine creatures. And something extremely interesting what we do in the labs, we perform in vitro incubation of the fetuses and embryos of the sharks we found dead in the boats. So whenever we found a dead shark that was gravid, we surgically isolate the eggs in the oviparous species or the fetuses if they are near term in the viviparous species. In such a way, we are able to not only release them back to the wild, but we are able to study them in the most important way we need. And this data of the reproduction biology actually deliver us on the new level in the terms of conservation, because all these actions related to the healing, release, reviewing of animals are proven to be highly effective in the conservation, especially when combined with education. That is exactly what we are doing. And not only for the students from the different grades of universities, but also with high schools, primary schools, kindergartens, and far wider public. And these babies, thanks to the support of our scientists, really gets a second chance. Sometimes we failed, sometimes we not. And even if we failed, we deliver important and new knowledge. So when not under the waves, I'm studying in the labs together with my team. And being a fish pathologist means that you're opening fish all the time, and it's quite hard for me, to be honest. Because and one day or even one morning or the night before, I'm observing the shark healthy, swimming, playing in their habitat, and just a couple of hours after, I'm observing them dead because of the pollution, because of the fisheries. And based on results I have, we have developed the conservation strategies for long-term in situ conservation for 25 species, which have been supported by the ministries of the governments of 3 countries here in the Eastern Adriatic, and are currently being discussed in 2 more, which means that we are trying to deliver and give our best. But I'm afraid it is not enough. We need far more engagement from the local communities all over the world, not only here, because all this pollution and everything that's happening to sharks is not only local problem, and it's not only fault of certain people. It is my fault, your fault, everybody's fault, and it is the proper time to take the responsibility and not only mitigate the effects of the fisheries, like you see here in the photo, but to mitigate the pollution, to mitigate the bycatch, to mitigate the habitat loss, and everything we need to save them from the certain extinction, because more than 0.5% of the sharks here in my region are threatened with extinction. Thank you for your attention, and I'm waiting for the Q&A session with you guys.
All right. Thanks, Andrej, for that great lesson to meet some really cool shark species and talk a little bit about some of the research that you're doing. I personally, as a diver, just love sharks. Anytime I can be in the water with sharks, whether they're big like the great hammerheads or little ones like little Port Jackson sharks, little horn sharks, it's always a great time on a dive when you see a shark.
Yes, I totally agree.
All right. So first thing we're going to do before we get into some Q&A action is we are going to play a little Kahoot quiz together. So while you were presenting, I pulled together a few questions to test our students' knowledge. We're going to put them up against each other and see who comes out on top in our mini shark quiz today. So let me put this link up here, kahoot.it. What's going to happen is I'm going to share a PIN number for you, and then you're going to put that PIN number in, and it'll bring you into your spot. So let me share my screen here, and then let's go right into our Kahoot. Actually, let me fix one thing here. There we go. Okay, now we're ready. So if you have one-to-one technology at your desk, then you can play right there. If you don't, maybe your teacher can put it up at the front of the room and you can shout out your answers to him or her. Here comes the PIN number for today. It is 203978. Also, if you're using a phone or a tablet, you could scan that little QR code and that'll bring you right into the event. We'll give a minute or two to get some students into their spots. They're starting to come already. There are going to be 4 questions today, some multiple choice, some true and false. If you get the answer right, you're getting points. If you get the answer right really fast, you get even more points. If you get the answer wrong, but you did it really fast, you still get 0 points. You need that right answer and get it in as quickly as you can. So Andrej, we already have over 150 groups signed in and growing quickly. So we're going to have to give another minute to get the classes in. They've all got special animal names today that are assigned to them, like the Captain Possum and the Rockstar Pigeon.
Yeah, I'm just looking. It's super cool.
The Wise Yak.
Like the Dr. Squid.
Very cool. I haven't noticed any shark ones yet.
I'm looking for it all the time, but I didn't see.
We'll see if one pops
in. It's close enough.
I see the Arctic koala. That's an interesting combination. All right, we're over 200 groups into the Kahoot, and it's still growing. So I'm going to give maybe 10 more seconds, and then we're going to take this quiz live so we can get to some Q&A action. All right, I think things have slowed down, so let's go live. Here we go. 3-second countdown. So, true and false to warm us up. Scientists think sharks first appeared over 450 million years ago. Is that true or is that false? Couple more seconds on the clock. All right, good job, crew. The vast majority went with yes, it is true. And Andrej, I think that's so amazing about sharks is there's such an incredible design that they've, in many ways, remained unchanged for millions and millions of years.
Yes, I agree with you. And it's like always difficult for me to speak about sharks with such a limited time frame because there are so much discriminative features that I could mention. And it's really need time. And when you have to put it in a short amount of time, it's just like slipping the surface about them.
All right. Let's see what our leaderboard looks like, our scoreboard. The Royal Wallaby is holding down that first place spot. Let's jump to our next question here. We've got a multiple choice question. The biggest species of shark is the basking shark, the great white shark, the whale shark, or the great hammerhead. The biggest species of shark. All right, good job, crew. The whale shark growing up to potentially the size of a school bus, about 60 feet, and then eating some of the smallest things in the ocean, just like the basking shark. That blows my mind too, that the biggest sharks in the world are filter feeding the smallest things out of the water. Pretty crazy. All right. Next question. Our leaderboard, a big shift. The amusing lobster has jumped into first place. Let's go to our next question. We have another true and false on deck. Sharks have skeletons, just like we do.
That's a tricky one, I must admit.
Couple more seconds to get those answers in. They came in pretty fast. Ooh, almost a little bit of a split, but the majority went with that they don't. Mostly made of cartilage. And so if you want to feel that, reach up and touch your ear, reach up and touch your nose. You can get a sense for the material that sharks, that their insides, that their skeleton is made of. Okay, amusing lobster holding down that top spot. One more question to wrap up, and then we'll get into some Q&A. The Greenland shark can live to be about 15 years, 40 years, 100 years, or 350 years. About how long do scientists think that those Greenland sharks? All right, good job, crew. About 350 years. And Andrej, I think that's, has something to do with where they live, right? Cold, deep water slows down their metabolism.
Of course. The speed of metabolism is a key.
Yep. All right. Let's check out our podium. Let's see who came out on top in third spot. We've got the stellar wildcat. Taking that second spot, we've got the polite dolphin. And number one in our sharks quiz for today, the golden camel sneaking in right at the end. All right. Good job, crew. Thanks for playing along with us today. Let's come back from that and switch gears into a little Q&A action. So I already see lots of questions coming in the chat. That's great. Keep those questions coming into the chat. We'll bring in some camera classrooms as well for their sharky questions. But let's start with one from YouTube here. So let's go. Okay, here's a good one. This is from Mr. Toludo's class. They're at St. Edward, and they're wondering, what are some of the characteristics in order for something to be classified as a shark? If you see these characteristics, you know it's a shark.
It's a perfect question. First of all, the skeleton have to be made of cartilage. This is a feature of all the classes, and another class is also called holocephali. But for sharks and their relatives, skates and rays, within the classes Selesmorbrachii, there are other key options, which are the denticles that are similar to our teeth in the structure. These are called denominal denticles, or the placoid scales. They don't have the swimming bladder. Their gills are open. They are not covered within an operculum, like in bonyfish, for example. And I didn't mention about how to differentiate shark from the skates and rays, because some of the families are very similar. But if the gills are positional on the ventral side, we are talking about the skate or the ray or stingray. And if the gills are positioned on the lateral side and the pectoral fins are not fused with the head, we're talking about the sharks. So these are a couple of characteristics that are differentiating sharks from other animals, but also all of them have internal fertilization, and some of them even develop babies with placenta, like the mammals do. And for example, the spiny butterfly that I showed the photos and we have incubated within our labs are actually in the near-term fetuses. When they are almost developed, the mother produces something like milk, which we call the histotroph. And from the wall of the uterus, there are some finger-like structures, which we call tropholemata, and they are producing this uterine milk that feeds the embryos through the spiracles and through the mouth. So it's pretty amazing to think that some of the skates, rays, or sharks actually could feed their prenatals with a milk. And all these are characteristics of the classes that comprise the sharks, skates, and rays.
All right, very cool. You learn something new every day. I had no idea about that with the embryos. It's very, very cool. You normally hear about sharks, just kind of like lay the egg or have live birth and done, right? Move away, gone. Yes. Yeah, very cool.
This is one of the things I forgot to say in my presentation. I wanted to roll back just because it's extremely interesting to know.
All right, awesome. Let's bring in a live group here. Let's go to Mr. Lowing's group first. It's a virtual crew hanging out with us. They are in Durham, in Ontario, here in Canada. Hey, Mr. Lowing, how's your crew doing today?
Doing fantastic today. Happy Friday.
Yeah. Shark Day, World Ocean Week.
So we had a question about the percentage of endangered sharks. What percentage are endangered? And also we want to ask about shark swimming adventures. Would you recommend it for people to try some of those, or are they not encouraged?
Well, the shark tour, I will go with the last one first. As far as I read in some paper, I think the shark tourism grows like $300 million or billion per year. Like it's a real big deal in the terms of tourism, especially in countries have the large sharks. But it is something that I wouldn't recommend. I'm against all kinds of disruptions of animals in their natural habitats, and these actions could be very easily misinterpreted if they are not conducted or led by the specialists. And if they are produced solely in touristic purposes, they can do more harm to the species than the good. And I think even if conducted, it should be conducted with a shark specialist who can explain to people what they are about to see, and who can explain the behavior, especially when diving in cages and things that actually can change the behavior of the shark in the water. And I think that people could misunderstand it. And even of the more than 500 species of sharks, only 6 I guess are actually responsible for the attacks on humans, and only 3 or 4 of them for large than 2 digits of attacks. But it is still something that we are entering their habitats, and I think the people should be aware of it. They are not invading oceans, they're living in the oceans. And it's something that we have to be aware every time we enter the ocean or the sea to swim, not only to going to see them like Joe does and I does with my scientific expeditions. And I think we should respect their home, like we anticipate somebody to respect ours, even if doing shark diving or swimming or tourism, because in most of these cases, what I saw, at least in my experience, maybe not true for all cases, but in most of these cases, the animals were actually misused, and I didn't like it. I didn't like it at all. And the percentage of the endangered sharks are very big. They are among the most endangered, most threatened vertebrates that are living currently. And even here in the Mediterranean, about 60% of species is marked like vulnerable, endangered, or even critically endangered. And here in my area, we encounter critically endangered species, even the fish markets. They are even being targetedly killed and caught and sold for like $2 per kilo. And fish burgers are often made from the shark meat and presented like some completely different other animals. And doing genetic tests in these developing countries is still extremely difficult and expensive. So we try to raise awareness within the local people about their roles in the ecosystems and how they maintain marine ecosystems, and try to, for the local peoples and the fishermen, to understand if they decline severely the population of sharks, they're going to have severe issues in other fields. And there will be dramatic disbalances in the ecosystem that would affect their lives as well, not only the sharks.
Those were 2 great questions. Thanks so much, Mr. Loing's crew. And it is sad when you hear statistics like many large species of sharks, their populations have declined over 90%. It's just stuff you don't love to hear. And they're so important as keystone species in our ocean. We need them in our ocean.
We need them. And we have, for example, in past 6 months, we have discovered 3 species that haven't been reported in both Adriatic and Ionian seas for the last 20 years. And when you have an encounter like this at the field, you don't know whether to be extremely sad or extremely happy because you found it, or extremely sad because it's definitely declining like more than 99%. And these are some things that even with all the fights and all the power we actually give, we still cannot stop. And me and my team will live at the field and we work 24/7 a day, but it's still something that need far more people and wider masses to involved in order to conduct effective conservation. And I think the changing of people's attitude toward the sharks is one of the key factors for the successful conservation.
Yep. All right. Mrs. Attia's crew is joining us in New Jersey. Let me bring them up front and center. Hey, New Jersey, how are we doing today? We got some shark lovers there?
Hi, how are you doing?
Hi, we're a 3rd grade class, and we were curious to know, do sharks have blubber? And what are sharks' patterns in the winter, say in New Jersey, USA?
I'm sorry, I had some connection issues. I didn't hear almost anything. Could you please repeat the question?
Sure.
Sorry.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, perfectly.
Do sharks have blubber? And what are the patterns of sharks in the winter time on, say, the coast of New Jersey, USA?
Okay, thank you. I must admit I'm not sure about this. It's far from the locations I ever studied. There are sharks who conduct both horizontal and vertical migrations, which are dependable from many different variables. One of them is the temperature, so it's like winter and summer season movements. But out of your course, I'm not expert for this area, so I wouldn't know. But most of the species actually stay at their local habitats.
There was this, the first part of the question, Andre,
Yes.
they were curious about if sharks have blubber, like some species in the colder regions do. I think Andre might have frozen for a second. He's in the field right now. Oh, there we go. You're back?
Yes, sorry. I think it's froze everything.
Yeah, they were just wondering about blubber. Do sharks have blubber, like say a seal? Oh, okay. I think he's having a little trouble in the field. So he is connecting from the field. He just exited. He's going to try and come back in. So we'll give a couple seconds. We'll get that question answered. And then we'll get into some more question action because I see a ton of questions in the YouTube chat. A little reminder as well that in a little under half an hour, we're continuing our elasmobranch action. Sometimes people call rays like mantas, flat sharks. So we're going to go to Mozambique with Andrea Marshall at 11 a.m. Eastern. So if you can stick around and join that, you don't want to miss it. And I think we've got Andre back here.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No.
I'm at the field, so the connection goes on and off. So I think I heard the question you had. It's about, do sharks have the blubber?
Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. Of course, for example, this conducted autopsy of like 6-gill shark that you saw in my presentation was extremely difficult because of the thick layer of fat tissue that go under the skin. So yes, of course, many of the species have expressed blubber like some of the other animals have, and it's have many different roles in their survival.
Okay, great question from our third graders in New Jersey.
And one interesting fact when talking about the blubber, maybe it could be interesting, because when we are doing the taxidermies from the already dead animals and we use them for education and capacity building with the students and everybody we work with, we took the detergents, the home ones, to actually treat the blubbers to get the fat out.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, let's grab another question from the chat here. So this is from Miss McWilliams' class, and they're curious about shark senses. So they're wondering, if it's true, how can sharks sense something like, a little bit of blood in the water from a long distance? How can they do that?
Yeah, sharks have extremely developed senses, and from the sense of smell is actually dedicated a significant portion of the brain. And when observing shark brain, there's a couple of portions that goes in the head brain, the rosencephalon and the telencephalon here, and then there are two different parts that go directly into the nostrils. And these parts are actually responsible for such an extremely strong sense of smell. And when we do the histological examination of the shark, even embryos, they still have extremely developed these lamels before they are even born. So yes, they cannot smell the drop of blood in miles like you can read in some medias, but yes, they can. Some of the species are capable to actually sense a few drops of the blood in the swimming pool, for example. And another great sense that actually extremely fascinated me personally is actually the electroreceptor pores that are located mostly in the head part and the lateral line that help them to feel the electric pores, and also by the mouth above the lower lip. There's one row of slightly bigger holes. These are the gustatory receptors that actually help them to feel the taste, and they are also in the throat located. So besides of these smells, they have extremely developed inner ear that probably a lot of people didn't think about, but yes, they have extremely developed inner ear. There are some of the species, like for example the Oxynotus centrina or the rogue shark, that is one of the most endangered deep sea sharks here, the angular rogue shark. Some of them actually, what we have so far, the evidence based on the CT scans, some of them when they are born, they bury their head in the mud to take the otoliths from the sand and they have endolymphatic pores getting outside where they can put these otoliths again in their heads to use them for the balancing the water. And some of the species, of course, develop them inside the womb, like for example, the spiny butterfly. Even in the stage 26, they still have fully developed otoliths in other parts of the inner ear. And the inner ear is also one of the structures within the sharks that extremely fascinates me. And every time I see it, either in the X-ray scans or the CT scans or the histology, I'm more and more fascinated about its structure and functionality.
All right. Yes, sharks are really amazing with those extra senses, like the electroreceptors, like the ampullae of Lorenzini and the lateral line. Just amazing, amazing species. So we've got a crew here, a class joining us from Ontario. They've been putting a lot of cool questions in the private chat, but I'm going to bring them in here with Ms. Gonzalez and see if they want to ask, if they want to mute their mic. There they are. See if they want to ask.
Hi there.
Hey, everyone. How are we doing?
So we have one question from Zoe. Come on over.
Yeah, come on up, Zoe.
So why do sharks have thousands and thousands of teeth?
Well, that's a perfect question. Like some of the mammals, not all of them, for example, the lammerties, kangaroos, even elephants, sharks can change the teeth through their lifetime. And some of species can change more than 35,000 teeth during their life. It's pretty amazing. They don't need to wash the teeth like we do all the time after the meal. And most of the people think about the needle-shaped, triangular, serrated teeth, but actually sharks have, in globally speaking, 4 major groups of the teeth. But when we observe the detailed adaptations, there are many dozens of different types of the teeth, and they are adapted to the prey that shark is eating. So the sharks that eat, for example, the mussels or the shells have the plate-like teeth. For example, the mustelus species, the smooth hounds that we have very often encountered here almost on a daily basis, and the sharks who eat fish and swim in the open oceans have mostly triangular teeth in the upper jaws and like sharp needle-like in the lower jaw for the catching of prey. So it's actually highly dependable of the prey they eat. Some of the species even have the mixed teeth, like the projection sharks, for example. They have different teeth in the front and the back of the jaws. And it's also one of the fascinating adaptations of these animals.
All right. What do you think, boys and girls? 35,000 teeth over their lifetime. That's pretty crazy. We just get one chance. We lose them, and then we've got our adult ones. There's lots of questions in the chat from your group. Do you want to squeeze in one more?
Absolutely. Charlie, do you want to come ahead?
Do sharks give birth or do they lay eggs?
Sorry, could you repeat it, please?
Do sharks give birth or do they lay eggs?
Oh, perfect question. It's actually sharks can reproduce in many different ways. Some sharks, for example, like the cat sharks within the family Silurinidae, there are a lot of cat sharks, and some other families also are reproducing with the eggs, which we call the oviparous sharks. And when we open these dead sharks on the vessels, we take the fully developed eggs and we incubate them here in the different room in our tanks to try to release them back to the wild. And so far, our team has released more than 300 of these baby sharks back to the sea. And some of them are live-bearing, and they give breed to live young, like the mammals do. But unlike the mammals, there's just a small percent of the sharks that have a really placental connection after the shark embryos spend the yolk sac, and the yolk sac, similar to the chicken egg, when they spend it, the mother continues to feed the embryo, sometimes by the uterine milk, like I told in my presentation. Sometimes even the embryos start, or the fetuses start to eat each other, like the sand tiger shark. And sometimes the sharks are nurtured by direct placental connection, and the mother exchange their blood with the embryo. So there are many different ways, but most of the sharks, not skates and rays, most of the sharks are give birth to live young. It's pretty amazing.
Before we leave our crew, can you guys do the sign for sharks for us? For if you're scuba diving and see a shark, it's like this. You got to put your hand up like this. Yeah, very cool. Good job, crew. Thanks for those words. Very, very cool. All right. So a few more questions here coming in online. Let's squeeze in a couple more before we wrap up today.
Joe, sorry. When my master students see the sharks with me underwater, it's not like this. It's completely different sign. It's like
they get very excited,
especially for the first time. It's like
so it's very different, yeah. But
it's
maybe
whatever I explain, whatever I speak, like the science, it's always all the time.
Very cool. All right. That just shows you how passionate people are. They're so excited to get in the water. And when you see a shark when you're underwater and diving, it's an exciting moment. It's not a nervous moment. It's not a scary moment. It's a really exciting moment anytime you get to see them. So Miss Gibson's class is with us, Andre. They're joining virtually. And they'd like to know if there was ever a time in the water where maybe you observed a shark maybe acting aggressively and thought, you know what, it's probably best to get out of the water.
Actually, I haven't had any kind of encounters like this in the wild, but I did have in an aquarium when we were studying the diseases of the sand tiger sharks in Istanbul. There was a way that a couple of guys that were not experienced within the close interactions get the tank with us. And yes, the sharks started to actually swim in the patterns that we thought could be, let's say, not aggressive behavior, but they could feel threatened from us. And we decided to leave the water for this occasion. But from all other cases, we never had any kind of aggressive behaviors or anything else like this.
Okay. I want to make sure we get this question. This is a good question here. Mr. Lowing just sent me a question in the chat here. And I think it's a really good one that will be on students' minds. So Mr. Lowing, if you want to ask that question about the aging, I think that's a great question.
Yeah, so we were wondering about, with the Greenland shark being 350 years old, how do you tell the age of a shark? And what's the oldest shark that's been discovered?
Yes, that's a perfect question. It's a lot of things that I would like to emphasize in my presentation, and it's just a short amount of time. But yes, there are different ways how you can age the shark. One of the old methods, which I don't like, is to age the shark based on the vertebral discs. When you make the cuts, and then you can count, like in the trees, you can count the goats, and to measure the average lifespan of the shark. But I don't like it because these cartilages that are calcified develop not yearly, they develop in different seasons. And I agree they can tell us about the season for a shark. Did they eat? Did they reproduce maybe in this time? But to be precise with the age, many papers, recent papers, prove it not quite accurate. Other method is also the isotopes in the ice, for example. That's how they age the Greenland sharks. And I think that the oldest one that was aged was around 400 and something years, as far as I read in one paper a couple of years ago, but I'm not quite sure. It should be checked. And for example, at the field, because it's easier way when we have the dead sharks in the vessels, we usually do this aging by the vertebra because it costs nothing and we can run it on the entire population if we have the samples. But we don't consider it as accurate and we don't publish it within the papers. It's something that we use for our internal, let's say, evaluations and estimations of the populations.
Okay, great question. I'm glad that one came up. One more question, Andre, and then we're going to sign off for today. So a few students here are curious about, they're asking about, we learned there's about 500 species of sharks, but some want to know, do you think that there's many more left to be discovered?
Yes, I think there's plenty to be discovered. Not like maybe many more of the species that waiting for us to discover, but yes, of course, we are not even close to discovering not only the number of species, but even the basic biology and everything. And even for myself, the more I research and the more I focus and the more amount of time I spend doing my scientific work, I realize that I don't know nothing about these animals. And I realize there's plenty of more to learn. And whatever new species I encounter, and I read dozens of hundreds of papers and write papers as well, but I realize that the knowledge is quite weak, and there's, even if I had like thousands of lives, it wouldn't be enough to understand a couple of species, not to mention all of them. And yes, I believe there's plenty waiting to be discovered. And I really hope that we will not lose the chance to discover them, because they are even waiting for us to discover officially, they are probably being threatened by us. And I'm really hoping that we will have the opportunity to not only discover them, but leave them for the future generations to come in, like they were here for millions and millions and millions of years. Like I told from the beginning, they are here for a very long times, even 200 million years before dinosaurs.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's start off with a quick shout out to all the classrooms. Thank you so much to all the students who joined us today, whether you're in a camera spot or on YouTube, or if you're going to watch this recording later today because it's too early in the day for you. And as always, it's great to have you live in the Kahoot. It's always lots of fun to play the Kahoot. A reminder that there's still events coming up today. 2 more events to cap off World Ocean Week. So if you head to exploringbytheseat.com/Ocean Week, in about 11 minutes, we'll be live learning about manta rays with Andrea Marshall in Mozambique. And then at 1 o'clock, we're going to be live at the Sea Turtle Hospital in the Florida Keys. So you don't want to miss either of those events. Andre, thank you so much for joining us from the field, for sharing your knowledge with us. And, you, like many other scientists and conservationists around the world, are doing their best to make sure that, we do have sharks for future generations. So thank you so much for the work you do. And thank you so much for sharing it with us today.
Thank you for having me. And I'm sorry for some connection issues we had, because here at the field, you never know what could happen.
Hey, I'm glad we did it because we got to spend time with you. A couple little blips, no big deal.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
All right. Have a great weekend, and hopefully we'll talk soon. Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you.